Happy Tuesday.
Tuesday.
We are here today to jump into the topic of the UX team of one. And I just want to, like, as always, I just want to jump right into it. We've seen many instances, and I personally have been in a situation of being the UX team of one,
Yeah.
knowing that it was only temporary. But when you put someone in that situation or you yourself are in that situation, it's a really lonely, anxiety ridden road because research is meant to be done with partners and design work is meant to be done with partners. And so if you are tasked with all of that, you run the risk of getting in your own head, missing things that might be opportunities because you're not bouncing your ideas off of anyone. So it's a huge, huge problem that I think a lot of organizations put their team member in, and it's not setting them up for success, and nor are you setting your business up for success.
Yeah, absolutely. And put on top of that, I've been in that situation too, and it wasn't as temporary as and I know Kenya's familiar with this as I thought.
Hmm.
So for
Hmm.
years being that UXer one,
Yeah.
the designer, the doing the usability test, doing
Yeah.
the requirements gathering.
Yeah.
And you're right. It's not only overwhelming, and you don't have people to bounce ideas off of, but even the things you're working on and some of the
Mhm.
priorities get really watered down. So it becomes a checklist
Mhm.
of things to do, if you know what I
Mhm.
mean. So
Mhm.
it's like you get a whole lot of stuff done, but with very little meat to it. Or that was my experience. It was definitely overwhelming, and you have to come up with strategies. I mean, you have to.
Absolutely. And if you think about all the different altitudes that you're having to think and work at, so you've got to be a part of those strategic conversations, and then you're getting into the tactical. And it's hard to switch in that way, especially when you're having to do it frequently over time. And you think about the challenge of being put in a situation where you are second guessing yourself in a lot of cases because there's no one to bounce your ideas off of to make
Yes.
sure that am I approaching it with the right perspective? Am I doing the right work? Did I analyze this correctly? And those things can lead to, you questioning everything that you do.
Yeah.
And the situation that I was in that UX team of one situation, not only was I doing the work, then starting to manage the work across different product offerings,
Yes.
but then it was also being an evangelist and having to educate. So
Yes.
not only was it doing the work, but then it was trying to convince others why it was important, why they need to put things down for a second and think about that human in the loop.
Yeah.
And that was exhausting. It was truly, truly exhausting.
Yes, it was. And think about when you are being that champion in an organization who needs a little nudge. I mean, what's one of the big things you need? You need to show kind of the ROI. You need to
Right.
show it's working. Well, how do you show that if you're kind of trying to not use bad language here, but if you're half butting everything,
Yes.
all the way through, then you're not even really able to show that return. So it is,
Exactly.
you spread too thin.
Mhm.
And I don't know about you, how do you address it? Of course, you scream and go, I've got to have help. I cannot work 80 hours a week.
Correct.
But that doesn't work. My experience was it took years before my screaming was heard due to the nature of the project and where it was.
Right.
But I quickly found, look, I mean, I think key is prioritizing. You have to
Mhm.
prioritize and you
Mhm.
have to say no. You can't prioritize
Yeah.
if you're saying yes to everything. And if you're the UXer, you're a team of one, everything that comes down the pipeline, they're going to need you. So,
Mhm.
no to me was one of the hardest things. I felt like
Mhm.
I was going to take away from the contributions of, showing what UX could do. But in reality, what would happen?
Yes.
I'd slack things, just let's get some testing done. Let's just test this. And
Everything was scrappy, but
yeah,
that in my case, everything becomes a scrappy effort. And when you brought this up earlier, you start to look at the work that you're doing and recognize that everything's half baked, everything is a rush, and not only do you not put forth your best effort, but then those in charge and your peers start to question the value of what you do because
exactly.
maybe they're not seeing the returns or not they're not seeing the outcomes that they'd expect. And so this becomes a spiral or a cycle of you being too spread too thin, and
Yeah,
then the organization questioning whether or not there's any value in what you do. It's like a two-edged sword.
it is. It really is. Yep. So,
Um,
yeah, saying no and aggressively prioritizing, that's my number one, piece of advice.
Absolutely. And I think that another one that I want to put up here is learning how to lead and
Yes.
facilitate. So you've got to become not only good at prioritizing, but delegating and figuring out how do I use my partners within the organization to either show them how to do something or lead and facilitate those conversations and co-lead and co-facilitate so that you can lean on others who might have a perspective as well, who may not be in your craft, but have a perspective that can help together tell that full story.
Yes. And not only may they not be in your craft, they may not even be on your immediate team.
Right.
So, I think about leveraging, hey, I can go out and do all these, site visits. I can't do a bunch of focus groups along with all my other work.
Mhm.
Well, can I pass something off to support? Can I get support involved, whether it's hand them a script,
Yes.
have people, or start collecting this piece of data if you have all these calls coming in, sales, whoever it may be. So yeah, you have to get creative with what
Mhm.
you do to get the maximum out of your one person team, UX team. So,
Yes, and when you think about having to go outside of your organization, this is where it's really, really critical
yeah,
to get a support network overall. So,
yep,
going to those meetups and finding Slack groups and other ways in which you can connect with like-minded folks where you can bounce your ideas off
yes,
of them or get some
coaching
level of, would you say?
or get a coach.
Yes.
Yeah, yep,
You took the words out of my mouth. I think that there's a lot to be said about the opportunity to have that training budget and coaching budget within the
yeah,
organization. So if you can't afford to bring in someone else within the organization, then look at how you can augment that UX team of one by giving them training, by giving them that coaching
yes,
support. And this is why I think it's been, very timely that we figured out that we've got to provide that office hours type effort or coaching opportunities for individuals because we have the experience and understand and have been through the situation and know how to navigate it. And it's important to, just like we did early in our career, to have others that can support your efforts in growing and also bouncing ideas off of when you need that.
yes. And the interesting point you talking about that, needing a coach, needing some training and being a champion for yourself as
Mhm.
that single UXer, like you got to help me in some way, right?
Yeah.
A lot of an observation I've made is it's usually on the either projects or
Mhm.
organizations, the startups
Mhm.
where you have this problem and that one person is so often green themselves. So, because of budget, whatever it may be, that's why they have one Xer, one UXer. But
Mhm.
it's also, those are the same organizations where they maybe have the funds to pay someone who's really green. So that's almost like a double whammy for that team of one, right? They're just really getting settled in the field, and now they've been thrown with an overwhelming amount of work, no
Yes.
one to collaborate with in their field, like you said.
Mhm.
So um, I think coaching is a good thing. I know I started out with them, in my case, a mentor.
Mhm.
Who provided that coaching for me. Now you have people like, whether it's us or other people who are out there who provide this kind of coaching, and literally, give the problem. Let's
Mhm.
talk through it together. Let's, figure out how to prioritize things. What do you need to do next? That sort of thing. But yeah,
Yeah, and that's the key. It's not about giving. So you as the person who is coaching or supporting someone else's efforts, it's not expected that you're going to give them the answers, but it's more of, here are the different ways in which you can approach that situation, and here are the potential outcomes that will you will achieve for each of those different opportunities or options, and let's weigh each of those, and you have the perspective being a part of that organization. Now you've arrived at figuring it out on your own, but you've
hmm,
also gained a skill in terms of, when you are working on your own, to figure out how you can approach it from, various lenses and weigh each option against the other.
yeah,
And that's a skill that I think, especially for people coming through, boot camps or other programs where you're not always, you might be going through the life cycle one time or a couple of times, but that starts to become something that helps you to explore options,
right.
which is necessary. When you think about the work that we did in school, you had to figure out, when you knew what you were trying to understand or study from a hypothesis perspective, you had to back
Hmm.
out of that and figure out which approach is. There were
Yep.
multiple approaches you could take, but which one is the right one?
Which one's the right one? Yes, exactly. And going back to your prioritization piece, you know, prioritizing things just religiously when you're overwhelmed like that.
Mhm.
Another piece, and I forgot to mention it then, is you're going to have to work with your product management teams. You're going to have to be involved in their priority. Okay, what are your priority? Yeah, they have roadmaps, right? So priorities exist, and that's another thing we've talked about in the past as well, that can help you if you don't know exactly how to prioritize things. Look at
Mhm.
the business. How are
Mhm.
they prioritizing
Mhm.
projects, features, efforts, whatever it may be,
Right.
and really stack your UX, roadmap, whether it be
Very
research,
good point.
design, any of it, that needs to be kind of
Very good point.
in lockstep with how they prioritize. Just, I forgot to throw that out there. I think that's a really good way
Mhm.
to help prioritize when there are a lot of competing requirements of you coming
Yeah,
in. So,
yeah. And when you think about the opportunity, going back to the leading and facilitating, leading design studios and facilitating, getting folks from across the organization to participate, to throw out, give them the problem, give them the story, and have each person in the room provide their idea
yep,
around the way in which they can approach the problem and in their design, and everybody pitches their idea, and you look at the best of each, and kind of marry those into a concept. So when you
yep,
think about the opportunities for you to again accelerate, but also to gain consensus, because now you've allowed other people to be a part of that process,
yep,
you're offloading some of that responsibility from yourself, but you're
yep.
also giving other people, you're empowering the team to come up with a solution, rather than feeling like, okay, oh my gosh, I'm the UX team and I've got to represent all aspects of UX, when that's really a tall order
Yes.
in an
Yep.
organization where you've got all these other disciplines that you're working with. So I think that there's a lot to be said about that facilitation and leadership skills and not just, staying heads down.
Yes. Yep. And embrace that, right? Without burning out. That's always a danger. I'd say the biggest danger is people burn out, they get
Mhm.
overwhelmed, you kind of lose motivation. But one of the pros of being that UXer of one, that team of one, is yeah, you're going to hone in so many skills.
Mhm.
Especially if you have the right mentor or coaching, or you have the right experience.
Mhm.
Now you can apply it. You're going to use a whole different set of skills along with your UX skills.
Yes, and you've got to understand what needs to be in your
Yes.
toolkit.
Yes.
That's another, I love to use the analogy of a toolbox or your toolkit because you
Mhm.
want to make sure that you have the right tools in there and know which ones to pull out at the right time, which I
Right.
think you're alluding to.
Yes. That's
Yeah.
exactly. Yep.
So I definitely feel like the using your community or your network to help with support, community and network being within your organization, but also outside, using resources like nngroup.com to go and find where work has already been done to help prove out. I can remember um, early on when I was the only UX person of being asked how much time does a user tolerate for a page to load on an application or a site? Those are the kind of things that you can spin your wheels trying to figure that out. Go look for a
Yeah.
reference. Don't think you have to have all the answers. Just know where to find the answers. That's the
Right.
key. So, if there's one takeaway that I would leave viewers with, it's to think about giving that UX person support. And that support comes in the form of investment in them. And that investment can allow them to get the training, coaching,
Yes.
the support that they need when they need it. The tools, we didn't even talk about the tools that are needed to help them communicate things effectively and to allow others to gain access to what they're working on. So I think that is probably my biggest takeaway.
Yes. I'd actually agree with that one. And then back to the say no, prioritize.
Yes.
That it's going to be critical to produce something that you're going to be proud of, and that's really going to show the return
Hmm.
on investing in UX. So
Yeah.
prioritize.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. Well, thank you for listening today. You know how to reach us, info@leangeeks.net. Otherwise, have a great week and we'll see you next time.
Great. Bye.
Bye.